Shulam Aleichem, everybody. Today's daf is daf Tez Zayin in Zvachim. We just started the second perik yesterday. Mamash, just in time. We are talking about a zar being mekabel dam. Can a zar do the avoid of Kabbalah's dam? Ma pitom. We're trying to find the makar. Yesterday we ended with a makar from a pasuk where it says Bnei Yisrael v'lo yechalu, the Gemara darshan. And now we're going for a second makar. It's two lines. There. Two lines from the bottom of Tezvav Medez. They're beautiful. The Beta Bishmuel Tana. Beta Bishmuel says, I have another makar. Asya b'kal v'chaymer me balmum. I have a kal v'chaymer from a koyin a balmum. Ma balmum. If a koyin balmum she'oichel, who can eat kachim. The halacha is a balmum a koyin. He can't do the avodah, but he can certainly eat kachim. Im ovad chilil, and yet if he does the avodah, it's possible. He's mechalel the avodah. Zar she'eino yoichel. First line, top line, Tezayin Amud Aleph, first word. Zar she'eino yoichel, eino din shem avad chilel. Certainly a zar. Tezayin. Top line, Tezayin Amud Aleph. Zar she'eino yoichel, eino din shem avad chilel. Certainly a zar that doesn't eat kachay kodeshim like a koyin balmum. Certainly he, if he's oived the avoida kegoin, the hainu, kabbalah's dam, then he's chilel, is mechalel, and it's possible. So the Gemara says not a good kal v'chaymer. You know why? Because mala balmum. Why is a balmum? Second line, Tezayin Amud Aleph. First word, mala ba'almum shekein osa by karev kamakriv. Because a mum is much more chamor than a zar. Well, how so? Because a behemoth that has a mum, the karev, a behemoth, the one that's being nikrav, right, the animal, if it has a mum, the halacha is it's pasul a carbon. The makriv, the kohen has a balmum, is pasul the avodah. So you see, a mum pastels both. She can also be karev kamakriv, right? Masha'en can a zar, right? There's no psul zar by a behemoth, right? A behemoth is it's not subject to bachlal a zar. So you see, it's not shaykh. So you see, is a prat. Yeah. כן. זה הקו החומר. אם בלמום שיכול לאכול בקודש. עבודה שלו פסולה, קל וחומר זור שאינו יכול לאכול.
נכון, למה?
קל וחומר שעבודו זה פסולה. אז הגמרא שואל, מה לבלמום? שכן עושה בקרב כמקרב, you find the chumra that a balmum has, maybe that's why, עבודו זה פסולה. So the Gemara says, no, tome yechiach. A koyin tome, right? There's no svara of karev kamakriv. What does it mean? Rashi says, ein behema makabelas toma. A bachai is not, a behema doesn't have the rules of toma. Right, so you don't have that problem that you have with the koyin with regard to tuma by a behema, and yet a koyin tuma avidase psula. So you see, there's no shaykhis with whether it applies to the behema or not. Just avidase psula. So too, a zar avidase psula, even though that psul is not shaykh to the behema.
A kohen has kedusha.
Yeah.
A kohen who's puzzle is a special problem.
Yes. So the Gemara asks, Mala tame, a koyin that's tame. Avidasa is psula, you know why? She came matama. It has a chumrah that he can be matama others. A zar can't be mazir others, right? He can't touch a kohen and make the kohen suddenly a zar. No. So you see there's a chumrah by a tame also. So you have a chumrah by tame, you have a chumrah by balmum, so you can't learn from either one of them. Says the Gemara. Zar? Past the mizbeach, between the mizbeach and the ulam is also, yeah. כן. יכול להיות הזורה, אבל לא בכל מקום בהזרה. לא בפנים במשל מזבח, כן. Yeah. So the Gemara says, Balmum yechiach, Balmum doesn't have the chumrah of shekein matame, and still if it does a psula. V'chazra din lo yizikar zev, lo yizikar zeh, tzad hashava sheben shemuzharin v'mav dechilulu, afani avizar shemuzav avad chilul. Classic tzad hashava. We take Balmum, we see avedase psula. We take Tameh, we see avedase psula. Mi bein shneim lamadnu, from between the two of them we learn, right? Even though this has a chumrah shekein matame, this is a chumrah shekein osaboy karev kamakrev, but between the two, what is the common thread? The common denominator is that they're muzr not to do the avodah, and if they do the avodah, it's psula. So too azar, afani avizar shu muzr avad chilul. So the Gemara asks, Minolam the muzr. What do you have the azara for azar? How do you know the zar has an azara not to do the avodah? Imidi and nazru. if you're going to use the pasuk of a Yinazru and the pasuk of a Yinazru, you'll darshan Zar, the Lashon V'Yinazru is Zarim Sheyinazru Me'avodas HaKadoshim. Like a Zar should separate himself from doing the Avodah. And that's the Azara. Then you don't need a Kal V'Chaimer. Chilul Begufei Ksiv Bei. That's Mamish Chilul. The Torah is telling you that if you do it, right, it says there in the end of the Pasuk, it says V'lo Yechalalu. The Avodah is Psula because of the Pasuk itself. I don't need a Kal V'Chaimer then. If that's the Azara, I don't need the whole Tzad HaShava. Elo V'Zar Lo Yikrav Aleichem. So it's Azara from V'Zar Likrav Aleichem, and over there it doesn't say the Lashon Chilul. So for that you need a Tzad HaShava from Tameh and Balmum. Says the Gemara still, Ma'ala Tzad HaShava, Ikel Mifrach Ma Tzad HaShava, Shekein Lo Yhutru B'Bama. Ooh, a Bama. Bizman Heter Bamas. There was a time in history where you could be makriv on a Bama. Yeah? Mishnah later in Kuf Yud Beis is basically recounts, it enumerates certain periods in history that bamas were mutaros. Yeah, you're allowed to be makriv on a bama. All right. So anyway, so here.
Mishnah on Shiloh, yes, no?
Yes, Lamashal.
Yeah.
A bama that was in Gilgal, Noivin Givain, there were bamas.
Okay.
That was a bamas tibur, and then there's bamas yachid.
Right.
Okay, we have to get involved.
So
but the idea is that a tameh and a balmum both cannot be makriv, not just in the Mishkan or in the Beis HaMikdash, even by a bama. Yeah. So once you see they have a chumrah, shekain lehutru b'bamas, then I'll tell you very pashit. Lehutru b'bamas, that's why Avodas and Psula, because they have that chumrah. But a zar, interestingly, right, a zar doesn't have the chumrah of Isser Bamas. A zar could be makriv on a bama. Yeah? A zar could be makriv on a bama. Yes, kosher lakriv a bama. And therefore, maybe if he could be makriv on a bama, he's not mechal the avoida in the Beis HaMikdash either. Says the Gemara.
Because a zor doesn't have the chesornan of a
tamei and a balmum.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
So the Gemara says no. Loitema tamei yechiach. You're right. Wow, that's a good pircha on the tzad hashava. Right. Tamei and balmum are both aser babama. A zar is mutter babama. You can't learn a zar from tamei and balmum. So what are we going to say? Says the Gemara, don't make a tzad hashava between tamei and balmum. Loitema tamei yechiach. Ela ema oinen yechiach. We'll have to stick in oinen instead of a tamei. What's an oinen? An oinen is, right? Rashi, the first Rashi in the second parak, says Rashi, kol Zvachim oinen. So Rashi says, kol zman shalanik bar hameis. As long as the maze did not have kvura, the person is an oinen, a kohen. A kohen who's an oinen is not allowed to do the avodah the rest of the except, by the way, for a kohen gadol, right? A kohen gadol, men hamikdash lo yetze, kohen gadol is an exception. But a regular kehanim are not allowed to do the avodah. Okay, and if he does the avodah,
no brachos, no bet, no nothing.
Yeah, if he does the avodah is psula.
Right.
So you have an oinen kohen that avodah is psula. You have a balmum kohen, avodah is psula. Mi bein shneim lamadnu. Whoever the Torah was mazer not to do the avodah and he did it, avodah is psula. So you have also zar from these two. You learn at tzad hashava. Says the Gemara. Hachanami asks the Gemara. Lifrech malat tzad hashava sheben shalkein lehutru b'bama. I have the same pircha on that tzad hashava. Whether it's tamei and balmum, and now you replace tamei with oinen, same pircha. Why? Tzad hashava is no good because tzad hashava has a chumra of lehutru b'bama. Lehutru b'bama means what? An oinen. Even in the times of heter bamas, he wasn't allowed to be makriv. A kohen oinen wasn't allowed to be makriv in a bama. Maskeflar of sama b'rei derava uman leimelan de oinen. Also, I'm sorry, I skipped a couple of lines. I apologize. Okay. First, the Gemara asks, "Malo oinen shekain aser b'maiser." Oinen has a chumrah, right? That's the vidoy. That's the vidoy that lo yechalti ba'oini mimenu.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Oinen is not allowed to eat maiser.
Right.
Okay. So it has a chumrah. Maybe that's why Avodas psula. A balmum has a chumrah shekain aser b'karev kamakriv. So therefore, you can't learn. So balmum yechiach. Okay. Chazad didn't learn Yizikrizah. Tzad hashava shana shemazar nachanami lifroich. Oh, now, so maybe you have a tzad hashava. Hachanami lifrach mal tzad hashava shemazar kahutru b'bama. Tzad hashava has also, each one has a chumrah of lahutru b'bama. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Maskal of somebody derava man leimelan da oinen aser b'bama dom shari b'bama. It's not so clear that a oinen is aser b'bama. A kohen oinen bizman heter bamas, that a kohen is not allowed to be makriv on a bama. It could be he is. So maybe you have a good tzad hashava. You don't have a pircha on the tzad hashava that balmum and oinen both have a chumrah that they can't be makriv. They can't be makriv on a bama. who says that an oinen can't be makriv on a bama? Maybe an oinen could. So therefore, we stay with this tzad hashava. So the second,
it's possible that an onan can. So therefore, a zor could
and still avodas psula,
even on a bama. By a zor on a bama.
Avodas psula is still possible in Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
Even though it can be makriv on a bama.
Okay.
So it's still avodas psula. So zar also you can learn from there that avodas psula if he goes and he's makriv Beis Hamikdash. Yes, says the Gemara. Okay, says the Gemara. We're in the middle of the Amar Tazayin Amar Aleph. The first word is Mesher Shaya. Rav Mesher Shaya Omar, he has a different kavachimer. Again, conversation around is around Kabbalah Bazar. How do I know that a Kabbalah cannot be done with a zar? That if a zar is makabel the dam of the carbon, it's puzzle. If it does psula, passes the carbon. Okay,
a zor can carry the dam, but he can't be makabel the dam.
Well, carrying
it's not so pashut.
Well,
in other words,
is a lochik sheira bizarre? What did we learn?
We discussed yesterday.
That was a kasha bizarre. Remind me, because
No, we had to be.
I don't think so. Right?
No.
It's only shchita. Only shchita is ksheira bizarre.
Right.
That's it.
Because basically, it seems to me that shchita is just a heksha mitzvah.
Yes. Shchita is ksheira bizarre. That's the only thing that's. And by the way, that's why Eli wanted to kill Shmuel. Shmuel was a Meir halacha b'fnei Rabbi. What was the halacha that he was Meir b'fnei Rabbi? That shchita ksheira bizarre. Because Eli said, bring a kohen to shecht, and Shmuel said, you don't need a kohen. A zar is kosher. So Eli told him, how do you know? Says because by all the other avodas it says v'hikr v'kohen, v'zarak ha'kohen. By shchita v'shachat oisai. Doesn't say shachat oisai. He's 3 years old, and Eli said he's got to die. And Chana comes running. Elana razeh ispalolti. Don't kill him. Yeah? The halacha was shchita ksheira bizarre. That's the only thing that's ksheira bizarre. Here we're talking about Kabbalah bizarre. Kabbalah is not. How do we know? So far we had a tzad hashava between oinen and balmum, mibein shneim, because oinen avedase psula and balmum avedase psula. So we learned also zar avedase psula, because they're all muzar. And when they're muzar, it means it translates as avedase psula. It's not just Torah says don't do it. If Torah says don't do it, it means if you do it, it's psula. So zar also. Okay, that's another makar. Shchita can. Shchita can.
Shchita is a...
Posel. Zor posel oto. Can.
Shchita is just matu the behema, but it's basically a heksha mitzvah.
It's funny, the Arba Avodas of the Arba Avodas of Dam of the Behema.
Yeah.
Part of the,
It's part of the process. Part of the process,
But
but
to shech the behema?
yeah.
Shchita.
Avad, you can't go without shchita. You can't do without
No,
shchita.
I understand. But shchita, you're makabel the dam, right? And you halach, right? You bring the dam and you spritz the dam.
Yeah.
So shchita is just...
The Avodas of Dam.
What?
4 components.
Yeah, 4 components of it is Adam. But okay, shchita is not an avodah.
So you're saying that shchita is one of these 4?
No, it's not.
Right, see?
What are the Avodas of Dam?
It's avodas Adam,
The
but it's
Kabbalah
not an avodah that passes bizarre. Okay, we have to leave that. But okay, fine. For now, we're talking about Kabbalah. Kabbalah's dam bizarre passes the avodah. How do we know Rav Mesher Shai is coming and is giving us a new source? That's source number 3. Yesterday we saw Bnei Yisrael v'lo yichalu. Now we have a tzad hashava from Oinen and Balmum. Rav Mashiach is coming to give us another source. How do I know that Kabbalah bizarre passes the carbon? So where it says, this is the din of Yoshev, right? Halacha is that if a kohen is Yoshev, avedase psul. That's our Mishnah, first Mishnah, second parak. We learned yesterday. So he says like this: Ma Yoshev sha'oichel. Just like if a Yoshev, a kohen that sits, is oichel bekachim. Yeah, he's allowed to eat kachim, right? Okay. All the Rishonim ask, what do you mean he sits? Halo ein yeshiva ba'azara. Elo l'malcha beis David bilvad.
Right.
How could the Gemara give a case? Ma Yoshev in the azara oichel. What does that even mean? Right? You're not allowed to sit in the azara. Okay. So we're talking about kachim kalim that can be eaten in Yerushalayim, all over Yerushalayim, and he's not sitting in the azara. He's sitting in Yerushalayim and eating kachim kalim, which is allowed to be eaten chutz la'azara. We're not talking about the azara itself. But al kaponim, ma Yoshev.
In a case...
Yoshev, yeah, she'oichel im ovat chilel. Yes, chamur mod. Avodas psula. If he does the avodah when he's sitting, yes, psula.
But again, if he eats the kachim outside of the
If he eats the kachim sitting, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, good.
Now, if he does the avodah while he's sitting, it's avodas psula.
Right.
Zar she'enoi oichel. Eating, standing, he can stand on his head, he still can't eat it. Nothing, right?
Yeah.
Einoi din shem avat chilel. So certainly if he does the avodah while he's a zar, I guess he just does the avodah when he's a zar, right? He's chilel. Say, yeah, it's funny. When he's a zar. You know, it reminds me of the joke of the guy come to the rabbi and he says,
Make me a kohen. Right?
Make me a kohen. Yeah. So the Gemara, Mal Yoshev. No. You can't do a kal v'chomer from the din Yoshev. You know why? Yoshev has a chumrah that Zar doesn't have, and maybe that's why avat chilel. What's the chumrah that a Yoshev has? Shekin pasal edus. Because a Yoshev is pasal edus. V'amdu shnei anashim. Right? It's in the Torah that the Edom have to stand in front of Bezdin. So b'meila, it's a chumrah that you see it passes the edus, so it passes the avodah. You see that it has a chumrah.
So
says
if someone is ill and cannot stand, they cannot be an aid.
Oh, now you're getting involved. Toisvis, Rishonim, Shulchan Aruch, not our sugya, but okay, fine, very good. Oh, says the Gemara, Mi Yoshev Talmid Chacham. Talmid Chacham, we learned in Sanhedrin. Talmid Chacham doesn't have to stand. He could sit.
Okay,
right?
good.
So here you have a case of Yoshev that doesn't have the chumrah of pasal le'edus. He's kosher le'edus when he's Yoshev. And still, avidosei psula. Yeah? So it must be that has nothing to do with the din of Yoshev psula pasal le'edus. Okay, so too is Zar. So it's a kal v'chomer from Yoshev. So the Gemara says, okay, you found me one exception where a Yoshev Talmid Chacham is still kosher le'edus. But generally, Yoshev is pasal le'edus. So then you could still ask a pircha, Ma l'shem Yoshev shekain pasal le'edus. We find the concept of Yoshev, right? Shem Yoshev, pasal le'edus. Okay, you tell me Talmid Chacham doesn't, but the Shem Yoshev applies to edus and it passes the edus. In the general matter, yes. Yeah. So the Gemara says Shem Yoshev loy parich. Nah, that he doesn't consider that a chumrah. Once I find Talmid Chacham Yoshev is not pasal le'edus, we can do the kal v'chomer from Talmid Chacham. V'imtem tzalomer parich. And if you're going to tell me that it is a chumrah and therefore it's not a good kal v'chomer, ask you me Yoshev mechadam mahanach. I'll use Yoshev and either oinen or balmum. You'll make a tzad shava from one of the previous ones, and between the two, you'll know that Zar is avodasei psula. The Kabbalah is pasal. Okay, says the Gemara, the Yoshev the kosher b'bama minolan. How do I know that Yoshev is kosher b'bama? Now, how did the Gemara know that the Gemara assumed that Yoshev is kosher b'bama? Because the Ramesh Shia doesn't have the problem. Otherwise, there's a pircha. Mali Yoshev shekain aser b'bama. It's a very very pashta pircha, right? So it must be that Yoshev is kosher. He held Yoshev is kosher b'bama. How do we know that in the times of heter bamas you could sit and shecht and do the whole avodah while you're sitting? Minolan amakra lamoid lifnei Hashem l'sharsay. You stand lifnei Hashem.
Right.
Lifnei Hashem v'lo lifnei bama. You could sit by a bama, and that's why Rav Shia said, you don't have a pircha of Isser Babama, because that's Mutter by Bama. So do a Kal V'chomer from Yoshev. Okay, that's it. So we have a Kal V'chomer from Yoshev. That's a third source. How we know that a Zar who's Makabel Dam, Avidas Psula. So again, yesterday we started the second parak with the limit of B'nei Yisrael V'lo Yichalalu. Then today we're learning there's a Tzad HaShava between Balmum and Oinen. And now Rav Shia has a Kal V'chomer from Yoshev. Okay, now Oinen. Now we go to the next item in the Mishnah. Mishnah started Kabbalah's dam is Aser Bazar. We found 3 Makairos. Now we go to the second item on that list, on the black list, Oinen. Gemara says Oinen also is Mechalal the Avoida if he does Kabbalah's dam. Minolan, how do we know that Oinen cannot do Kabbalah's dam? Says the Gemara Dechsev, Umen Amikdash lo yetze velo yechalel. It says by a Kohen Gadol that he shouldn't leave the Beis Hamikdash, and his avodah is not going to be mischalo, which means that he could still do the avodah. Oh, that's only the Kohen Gadol ha'acher, but a Kohen Hedyot Shelo Yotze that did not leave the Mikdash premises when he's in Oinen, and he did the avodah chilal. So you have a diak in the Torah. Torah makes an exception only for a Kohen Gadol who's in Oinen. He's allowed to stay in the Mikdash, and he could still do the avodah v'lo yechalel. Ha'achar, a Kohen Hedyot would be mechalel. So you see, the din of a Kohen Oinen Pasels the avoida, pasels the carbon. Rabbi Elazar Amar Mehachar. Rabbi Elazar says, I have a different makar how I know Einan. A kohen Einan can't be makabel dam, can't do the avoida. You know how? Ooh, we got to get to the story in Parashas Shmini. There are 3 times when Moshe Rabbeinu got angry. One of the times is on Rosh Chodesh Nisan B'yoim Hakamas HaMishkan. Right after Nadav and Avihu brought the Ketores into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and they died, that same day, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Aaron HaKohen had to bring 3 Seirim, 3 Chatois. One, not Aaron HaKohen, but Sar Nachshon. The Nachshon ben Aminadav brought was the first of the Nesiim that brought the carb Nachshon ben Aminadav. It's called Sar Nachshon.
Okay, so
and the Sar Izim, and also a Sar Rosh Chodesh. Every Rosh Chodesh you bring a Sar, a Chatas, right? Wow. So here's what happened. Okay, the story goes down this way. Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Elazar and his summer, Shnei Bonov HaNisarim, the leftover sons, and the remaining sons. And he says to them, Vayiktzayf Moshe. Moshe gets angry. Why did he get angry? He says, Madua lo yachaltem es hachatas b'mekayim hakodesh. Why didn't you eat the chatas? You're supposed to eat the chatas. Why didn't you eat the chatas?
One of the time he forgot the halacha.
Yes, because he got angry. But he says, why didn't you eat the chatas, right? So, now why didn't they eat the chatas, by the way? Why didn't they eat the chatas? Teretz is because they ate the first 2 chatos because that was katshe shah. So they were allowed to eat it even though they were in Einan, because Nadav and Avihu died that day, just shortly before. So they were still allowed to eat it.
What do you mean Katshe Shah? It means that...
Katshe Shah means Sar Nachshon only came once in history.
I see.
The Sar Izim only came... So that was an exception.
Yeah.
The Sar Rosh Chodesh comes every month.
Yeah.
So that's Katshe Dairis. Katshe Dairis, there's no heter, Einan. So that's why they couldn't eat it. But Moshe Rabbeinu forgot the halacha, and he got angry. He says, why didn't you eat it? Madu lo yachaltem es hachatas. Okay, so Aaron HaKohen answers him. Okay, Rabbi Elazar Ma'acha, this is the response Aaron HaKohen gives Moshe. Hein hikrivu, do you think that my sons were makriv, that soyer Rosh Chodesh, for them to eat it? They wouldn't allow it. Ani crafty, they're einan, they can't do the avodah. They couldn't do the avodah, right? The kachi dairis, they can't do the avodah. I had to do it, right? All the karbanas, not just the kachi dairis. Even the first 2 chatois, I had to do it because the avodah is mutal alai because they're einans and they can't do it. So I was makriv and ani crafty, which means what? Mechlal, the inu akriv shaper istarif. Which means if they would have been makrivit, Moshe Rabbeinu's taina would have been correct. He should have been burnt. He can't eat it because they're einanim. They're not allowed to do the avodah. So Rabbi Elazar says from here you see that a kohen who's an einan, unless he's the kohen gadol, is not allowed to do the avodah because that's what Aaron's response was. It's not that they did it. If they did it, they weren't allowed to. They're einanim. Then you would have burnt it. But I'm the one who did it, and therefore it's okay. And I was. So one second. So if he did it, so why was it burnt? Why was it burnt? Teretz is because it's katshe dairis. Because it's katshe dairis. He wasn't allowed to eat the katshe dairis. Okay. For a blazer, my time aloy omar. Why does a blazer running to the story of Aaron HaKohen? Why doesn't he make the diak from the pasuk? Says the Gemara, Amalach miksev ha'achar shelo yotzachilol. It doesn't say ha'achar shelo yotzachilol. The reason why the Torah says kohen gadol is an exception, instead of framing it as kahanim and yoitim are puzzle, because I would have thought that kolshkan the kohen gadol, Rashi explains, is kedusha is more chomer. I would have thought if the Torah wouldn't have told me kohen gadol is mutter be'avodah b'shas is an oinen, I would have thought for sure he's aser, for sure he's avodah aser psula, because he has a much bigger kedusha, so he has to guard it.
But he represents Klal Yisrael,
and therefore there's an exception.
Right. Well, because the kedusha, he's kaddish, but this is for Klal Yisrael. This is not personal.
Yes. Okay. So the Gemara of the Idach, and what about the Amoira that learns it from the Mikdash? Why doesn't he learn it from Aaron HaKohen's response to Moshe Rabbeinu? The Idach, my time loy Omar mehene krivu. Yeah, 2 lines on the bottom of the Zayin Amar Aleph. My time loy Omar mehene krivu. Ksovar mepnei atuma nisrafa. The whole conversation didn't really revolve around an oinen. Really, I'll tell you, oinen is allowed to do the avodah. It's allowed to do the avodah. It could be that Allah in a summer did the avodah. They were the ones who are makravit. You have no raya from there. What was the issue? The issue was that because they're oinens, they can't eat it.
Right.
And since they can't eat it, it had to sit there until at night, until after the kvura, until at night. And because it sat there, it sat around, somehow it contracted tumah. Because it just sat around, they didn't eat it right away. So they had
Is there
to...
a time limit on that korban?
Whatever it is, but tumah, once it becomes tameh, they couldn't eat it because they had to wait till the evening to eat it because there was still an einan. Yeah. So while they were waiting around, Rashi explains, right, that's what the Gemara means, somehow the chatas contracted tumah. It became tameh. Now they can't eat it anymore. So chatas, that shenitma, that you can never eat, you have to burn right away. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu got angry. Why didn't you eat it? Madu lechalta b'zachatas. Teretz is, Aaron HaKohen answered him, because hein hayoim hikrivu. It was still the same day that they were makrivit, and they can't eat it because hayoim is the day that they were an einan. And therefore, it sat around, it became tameh. It became tameh. They had to burn it. That's why. So, but it's not a raya.
Noser is not shaykh by this. This is no shaykh is to noser.
No shaykh is to noser. It's not a raya that a kohen einan is not allowed to do the avodah. Really, they did the avodah. Why did they burn it? Okay, they came tameh because they couldn't eat it right away. Okay, so the kitzur ha'maisa ksav netumen esrfa. Okay, the Be'er Shmuel Tana, we have a third makar. Again, so far we have two makaris. How we know that an einan is not allowed to do avodah. Mechal the avodah. One is Mikdash Lo Yetze, the diak from a kohen gadol. Number two is from Aaron HaKohen's response to Moshe. And number three, the Be'er Shmuel Tana, Asya b'kal v'chaymer mibalmum. Same shakla we just had by Kabbalah's dam. We have again by an einan, by a zar. Same shaklatari we had by zar, not by Kabbalah's dam, it's all Kabbalah's dam. Same by zar, we're having now by a einan. Rabbi Shmuel wants to say, same ton of Rabbi Shmuel ton, probably the same day. They dash on this for an einan as well. Asbek l'chayim balmum, uma balmum, top line to zayin amad beis, ma balmum sha'oichel im avad chilel. A balmum was allowed to eat kachim. Still, if he does the avodah, if he does a psula, oinen she'ein oichel, a oinen that is not allowed to eat kachim, ein odin shem bavat chilul, bavadai, if he does the avodah, he's machal the avodah. Asks the Gemara, ma le balmum, shken also bekrevin kamakriva, the same pircha. Balmum has a chumrah that it applies, this psul of mum applies even to the carbon, to the karev. So therefore, maybe avodah a psula because of that. What is a zar yechiach? No, you can use zar. Zar doesn't have the craving kemakriven, right? There's no psul zar by the behema. So what is the malu zar shkein ein la takana? That never has a takana. But balmum yochiach, right? A balmum who he has a takana when the mum goes, I guess it's a temporary mum, right? And still b'shas he has the mum, right? Avodas psula. V'chazra din lo yizakir zat tzad shavush ben shem muzharin the avdu chilalu afani avi ein shem muzhar avat chilal. Tzad shavah between balmum and the zar, from there, these two you learn to an einan, just like balmum and a zar, avodas and psula. The Torah says, don't serve, don't do the avodah. And if they do the avodah, it's mechalal the avodah, it passels. So too, by an einan, where the Torah says, don't do it, if you do it, it's going to pass. Where it says, but hey, heichen muzer. Yeah, where is the einan muzer in the Torah? If you're going to tell me, there it says chilul, in that pasuk itself, I wouldn't need the kal v'chomer. Ela mehen ekrivu iksaver mepnei aninus nisrafa. It's mehen ekrivu, and they hold it was nisraf because of aninus, which means what? Nobody was able to eat it. And that's why they had to burn it. Right? So that's why they had to burn it. The aninus nisrafa. I guess they were usher to eat it. A chatas, when are you allowed to eat a chatas? What's the din with a chatas? What's the din with a chatas? What's the zman achila by a chatas? It's yom v'layla, right? So this Tana holds that the layla shel achrav is also part of the yaninus.
Yes.
So they will never be able. So they'll never be able to eat it because by the time the oinen, the isser oin, chatzos when of layla.
Yeah,
Okay.
Chatzos.
yeah,
Yom
Till chatzos.
till the chatzos alayla.
yeah, that's what it says.
See.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. So it's a very short time frame. So what happens is. Okay, beautiful. So it makes a lot of sense. Gemara says that they couldn't eat it because they were tamei. I mean, because they were an einan. Excuse me. because died that day. And this Tana holds that the Isser Oinen carries into the night. Even if they're buried already, carries into the night. So once
until Alos?
till Chatzos at least.
Okay.
At least till Chatzos, till the Chatas could be eaten.
Yeah.
By the time the Chatas really could be eaten, by the time they're not Oinen anymore, the Chatas, the time is expired already. They can't eat it, so that's why they burnt it. Okay, but Al Kaponim, that was the Azhara.
So it's not a matter of Tumah. It's a matter of just
The time, the window.
Right, yeah.
Right. So the Gemara says, Ikal and Mefrech still. You can ask a pircha on this, Tzara Shava between Balmum and Zar. Mazeh? Chatas is Kachi Kadishim. Kachi Kadishim. Chatas is Kachi Kadishim. Kachim Kalam. Yeah, Kachim Kalam.
אבל פסח זה קודשים קלים, וגם כן אסור לאכול אותו עד חצות.
אחרי חצות אסור. לא כל קודשים קלם יש להם אותו דין.
ישרף באש, טוב, אז חטאת רק עד החצות ללילה וישרף באש.
Yeah. The Gemara says, Ikal Mifrach, we could still have a pircha here. What's the pircha? Mala tzad hashava sheban shekein hutra miklolai. The tzad hashava, because you have to keep track. The tzad hashava right now, what's the limud that a oinen is osir avodosoi mechulal. If he does the avoid, that's puzzle. What's the limud? The limud is tzad hashava from Zar and Balmum. Says the Gemara, Zar and Balmum have a chumrah. What's the chumrah Zar and Balmum that Oinen doesn't have? Oinen has an exception. Who's the exception by an Oinen? The Kohen Gadol.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right.
There's no exception by Zar.
No.
There's no exception by Balmum.
No.
So maybe there's a chumrah by those two. That's why if they do the avoid, that's possible. Because the Torah never made an exception for any Zar or for any Balmum. But when it comes to Oinen, we find the Torah was Mekel. Somebody had Hutter Mechlala. Who's the Hutter Mechlala? The Kohen Gadol. So maybe that's why you can't learn from the Tzad HaShava. Right? So that's the Gemara's pirch on this Tzad HaShava now. Asks the Gemara, Ikala Mifrach, Malat Tzad HaShava Shebehen. It's like 10 lines on the top of the Zayin Amud Beis. Ikala Mifrach. The first word of the line is Lemifrach. Malat Tzad HaShava Shebehen Shekein Lo Hutter Mechlala. Oh, so therefore you can't... Oinen is Hutter Mechlala. Says Gemara, Tama Yechiach. So the Gemara is Tama Yechiach. What's Tama Yechiach? That it's Hutter Mechlala. Tama is Hutter Mechlala, right? Where's Tama Hutter Mechlala? Tama Hutter B'tzibur. Yeah? Yeah. Carbon Tzibur. So Tama Hutter B'tzibur. And still, if a Tame Kohen does the Avodah, it's puzzle. So therefore, you could see from there, it's not a show from Tame that Hutter Mechlala is not an issue of here, Avodas and Psula. Gemara says, Ma'ala Tame, but she came Matame. Oh, has a chumrah that he can be matama others. A zar can't be mazir others, right? If I touch you, you don't become a zar. A tame, if he touches somebody else becomes tame like him. So either way, hanachichichu v'chazer adin hatzad hashava sheben shemuzarin. Kitzur Ma'aseh, we have a tzad hashava, triple tzad hashava. We have a tzad hashava from tame, zar, and balmum. Between the three, each one has a chumrah. Tame is matame, right? Zar and balmum is lehuter mechlolon. There's no exception there. But a kapanan from all three, what do you see? That the Torah, when the Torah says don't, if you do, avodas psula.
Yeah.
So too, an oinen, where the Torah says don't. Where did the Torah say don't by an oinen? By the story with Aaron HaKohen and Moshe. The Torah says don't. If he does it, avodas psula. Gavaldig. Says the Gemara, Velifroich. Gemara doesn't give up so easily. It's unbelievable. Gemara says, I still have a pircha on the triple tzad hashava. Now we're up to the triple tzad hashava of Balmum, Zar, and Tameh, to learn oinen from those three. Gemara says, I still have a pirch on that tzad hashava. You know why? Ma'ala tzad hashava shebehen. It has a common chumrah. What's the chumrah? Shekein lo yhutru michlalan. Eitzel koyin gadol bekorben yochid. Unbelievable. Now we're zoning in here. Yeah? You never find an exception by a koyin gadol when he brings his korban yochid. If the koyin gadol gets a mum, not allowed to bring it. If the koyin gadol becomes tamei, not allowed to bring it, right? Because korban yochid, not talking about tzibur, korban yochid, right? And if the koyin gadol, okay, if the koyin gadol is no, so by an oinen he is. Mikdash lo yetze kecholavi. So the Gemara says, so I found a common thread between this triple tzad hashava that Oinen doesn't have. So you can't learn Oinen from those three, right? What is it? Oinen has an exception by a kohen gadol v'karban yachid. That a kohen gadol who is an Oinen can still bring a karban yachid min hamikra, a pasuk in the Torah.
לא פותר אותו מהמצווה הזאת, לא פותר אותו.
לא פותר אותו, הוא עדיין עושה את העבודה שלו. Yeah? מה שאין, if he's tamei, out, right? Or if he's a balmum, out. Or a zar, which is the third element in that tzad hashava, third part. A zar also, there's no exception for a zar, no exception, no heter ever for a zar to do any
אתה
avodah.
יודע מה ההבדל? במום וטמא, הבעיה איתו. אבל בעונן, הבעיה לא איתו, הבעיה שקרה לו מת. הוא לא עצמו לא, הוא בעצמו אין מום אצלו, אין טומאה אצלו. תבין?
לא, אז זה יותר קשה עכשיו. איך אפשר ללמוד עונן שזה פסולה?
אתה לא יכול.
זה הפרש.
זה התירוץ שלי, אתה לא יכול, כי זה לגמרי.
בסדר, זה הקושייה נפלאה.
כן.
אתה שואל, איך יכולים ללמוד מהצד השובר של זור, בלמום, אנטומי, beautiful. זה קורה לאדם, לגברה. עונן is outside of him.
גופה של האדם.
באת בדיוק בזמן לראות איך שהאבא שלך לומד.
It's like chayfetz and gavra type thing.
Chafetz and Gavra, that's Reb Shoel saying.
Right.
Yeah, he's saying l'chayr. Okay, very good. Gemara doesn't ask it that way, but אפשר לשאול את זה גם כן. But the Gemara says, the way the Gemara asks, which means that there are no exceptions to a zar, no exceptions to Tumah when it comes to a Kohen Gadol b'Kar ben Yachid, and there's no exception to Balmum when it comes to a Kohen Gadol b'Kar ben Yachid, says the Gemara, not so fast. By Tumah, there is an exception by a Kohen Gadol, not by Kar ben Yachid, by Tzibur, right? Because Tumah hotcher b'Tzibur. So Shein Tumah Mia Ishtara. Tumah is not exactly right, because you're zoning into a Kar ben Yachid, a very specific case. But when you look at the Shem Tumah Bichlal, you'll see that there is an exception by the sugya, under the banner of Tumah. And therefore, it's not a real pircha. You haven't found a real tzad hashava, a pircha on the tzad hashava, that is common by all three of them equally. Okay, Lamaisa. If you ask your pircha, this wouldn't be a teretz. You'd have to figure out a different teretz than your pircha, okay? That's the Gemara's teretz is for the Gemara's pircha. Your pircha, gavra and chefza, that I'm not sure about. Okay, Rav Meshashi Omar, Asi b'kavachomer miyoshev. A fourth source, how I know, okay? Valdig, wow, it's not easy Gemara, but Metz Hashem, we're moving forward slowly. So the Gemara says, he has a fourth makar, how I know that Einan Avedasa Psula. And this is very similar to a Zar, right? Just like you want to learn Zar from Yoshev, also here he learns Einan from Yoshev. Ma Yoshev she'oichel. A Yoshev, a kind that sits. Right, we're talking about he's sitting in Yerushalayim and eating kachim kalam, which you're allowed to do. She'oichel. Im ovat chilol, still, if he's oivid, he's mechalol. Einan she'eina oichel, eina din shem ovat chilol. So vada einan, that doesn't, not allowed to eat kachim, certainly avedasa psula. Gemara says, Mala Yoshev has a chumash can pasal edis. Okay, mi Yoshev Talmud Chacham. Talmud Chacham is not pasal edis. Gemara says, okay, fine, but Mala Shem Yoshev can pasal edis. But the idea, the concept of Yoshev, we find the chumrah there because usually it's pasal edis. Gemara says, Shem Yoshev loy parich. It's not a pircha. V'im tem tzlaim a parich. Asim Yoshev mechad mahanach. Yeah, you can learn from Yoshev and couple it together with either Balmum, Zar, or Tomi, make it tzarashava, and you're good to go. So basically, Gemara has how many makairos for an Einan? Let's just sum it up quickly. Einan, the Gemara asks, how do I know Einan avedase psula? From the Kabul the Dam, it's puzzle. So the Gemara said, first, min hamikdash lo yetze. So Baistos, that's only a Kohen Gadol, but Kohen Hedir avedase psula. Then we had Rabbi Lazar who says, from the Aaron HaKohen's response, that his sons couldn't do the avodah because they were Einans. He's the Kohen Gadol. Okay, that's another source. And then we have a triple tzad hashava from Balmum, Zar, and Tameh. And then we have Meshashia, Kavachaymer from Yoshev. So 4 Mekairos, how I know Einan Avedase Psula. Okay, next. Says the Gemara, Einan Posel. Okay, Mishnah said, Einan that does the Mekabel Adam, Avedasai Psula, it passes the carbon. Omar Rava, Lo Shanu Elu Bekarbon Yachid. When is a Einan Mechalal the Avodah? That's only by Karban Yachid. Avol Bekarban Tzibur, Meratza. Oh, an oinen that does the carbon tzibur. Kohen hedyet. Yeah, he's not allowed to do the avodah, but if he does the avodah for carbon tzibur, yeah, it's okay. Doesn't pass it. The mission is only talking about carbon yachid. How do I know carbon tzibur? Yes. Kavachaymer mi tuma. Yeah? Ma tuma. Shalei hutra mechlala, it's a kohen gadol b'carbon yachid. By tuma you find that a kohen gadol is not allowed to bring a carbon yachid for himself if he's tamei. It's not hutra. Just because he's kohen gadol, it doesn't matter. Right? And still, the halacha is hutra etzel hedyed b'carbon tzibur. It's mutter for kohen hedyed when you're talking about carbon tzibur. Aninas shehutru mechlala etzel kohen gadol b'carbon yachid eino din shehutra etzel kohen hedyed b'carbon tzibur. An oinen, which is hutra mechlala, there is a heter for kohen gadol b'carbon yachid by an oinen. Kal v'chaymer that it's hutra etzel kohen hedyed b'carbon tzibur. Certainly it would be mutter for kohen hedyed b'carbon tzibur. Oh wow! Again, kal v'chaymer is madach tomo. Kohen gadol b'carbon yachid is not good. Still, by a head, etzel hedyed b'carbon tzibur is good. So aninus that is hutra mechlal etzel kohen gadol b'carbon yachid. Eino din shel hutra etzel kohen hedyed b'carbon tzibur. So aninus should be mutter for kohen hedyed b'carbon tzibur. That's the kal v'chomer. That if where you see tuma by tuma, the kohen hedyed is better than kohen gadol. So certainly the kohen hedyed should be better. Should be equal to the kohen gadol. Yeah. If by tuma the kohen hedyed is better than kohen gadol, right? Because the kohen hedyed is allowed to be makar of carbon tzibur b'tuma. Kohen gadol is not allowed to be makar of carbon yachid b'tuma. So there you see kohen hedyed is better by tuma than a kohen gadol. So you should, by aninus, he should at least be equal. Right? That's the kal v'chomer. Should be equal to a kohen gadol and should be allowed to be makar of a carbon tzibur. Okay, that's Rava's kal v'chomer. Maskef la Rava bar Eloi. So Rava bar Eloi asked the following pircha. He says, "Wow, you had to make a lot of assumptions to come onto this kal v'chomer." So he's going to smash this kal v'chomer to pieces. He's going to say, "I'm going to darshan the kal v'chomer against you." Watch this. Lo tutar aninus etzel kohen gadol b'carbon yachid. Let's aser a kohen gadol who's an oinen to be makar of a carbon yachid mikal v'chomer. Let's do this. Let's use this kal v'chomer against the pasuk in the Torah. Umat tuma shehutra etzel kohen hedyed b'tzibur. If tuma, which is mutter by kohen hedyed b'tzibur, lo yehutra etzel kohen gadol b'carbon yachid, and still kohen hedyed is better than a kohen gadol when it comes to tuma. Aninus shelo yehutra etzel kohen hedyed b'carbon tzibur, right? If aninus, which is not so aninus, which is not mutter by kohen hedyed b'carbon tzibur, certainly should not be mutter by kohen gadol b'carbon yachid. So again, he's saying an interesting thing. He's saying, okay, the head spinning. Kal v'chomer sharpens the minds. By the way, we had a Gemara earlier. The Rav Huna gave his talmidim a kal v'chomer, even though Ben Azai's source. Yeah, Ben Azai had a source that Oila is part of the blacklist. Shlel Lishmas Pasul. He had from 72 Zekanim. Rav Huna led his talmidim through a bunch of kal v'chomers, and at the end, we said Ben Azai has nothing to do with the kal v'chomers. It's a source. There's Makabel from the 72 Zekanim. The Gemara says, why are you bringing kal v'chomers? L'chadu talmidav, to sharpen the minds of his talmidim. So if your brain is spinning right now, it's the objective of the Gemara to sharpen our minds. But either way,
only my brain.
The Gemara said, okay, we're almost done with this. 2 minutes. So the Gemara says, "Lo tutar aninas es l'kohen gadol b'carbon yachid." Don't be matter aninas by kohen gadol b'carbon yachid mekal v'chomer. Or mat tuma shehutra etzel kohen hedyed b'tzibur. By tuma, which a kohen hedyed is allowed to do for a carbon tzibur, still lo yehutra etzel kohen gadol b'carbon yachid is not mutter for a kohen gadol, right? That means a kohen gadol is worse than a kohen hedyed when it comes to tuma, because a kohen hedyed can be makar of a carbon tzibur, but tuma. And a kohen gadol cannot be makriv b'tuma, a carbon yachid. So in a certain sense, when it comes to tuma, kohen hedyed has the advantage, better than a kohen gadol. So ibazoi aninus, by oinen, where a kohen hedyed is not allowed to be makriv, even a carbon tzibur, certainly a kohen gadol should be worse than a kohen hedyed here. If he's worse than a kohen hedyed by tuma, certainly he should be at least equal to a kohen hedyed by aninus. It means he shouldn't be allowed to be makriv a carbon yachid if he's an oinen. That's against the pasuk in the Torah. Okay, another kasha. Also, let there be a heter tuma by kohen gadol b'carbon yachid mikal v'chomer. Ma'aninos, we know a kohen. There's no heter tuma by a kohen gadol b'karben yachid, right? The only heter is oinen kohen gadol b'karben yachid, not tuma. But the Gemara says, let's use the kavachomer to be mater tuma by kohen gadol b'karben yachid b'kavachomer. Ma'aninos sheloi hoter etzel kohen hedyed b'karben tzibur, hoter etzel kohen gadol b'karben yachid. If aninos, which is we're more chomer by a kohen hedyed b'karben tzibur, still it's mutter for a kohen gadol, which means kohen hedyed is worse. Kohen gadol is better when it comes to oinen. So tuma shehoter etzel kohen hedyed b'karben tzibur and shehoter etzel kohen gadol b'karben yachid certainly should be equal to a kohen hedyed and be allowed to be makriv b'tuma a karben yachid, and it's not true. Okay, and finally, last one. And also, you use the kal v'chaymer not to be matir tuma by kohen hedyed b'karben tzibur mekal v'chaymer. What would be the kal v'chaymer? And we know you're allowed to, but use the kal v'chaymer against the halach in the Torah. Or ma'aninas shehutra etzel kohen gadol b'karben yachid. Aninas, which is mutter by kohen gadol. Loi hutra etzel kohen hedyed b'karben tzibur. By aninas, a kohen hedyed is worse. Tuma sheloi hutra etzel kohen gadol b'karben yachid. By tuma, which is not mutter for a kohen gadol b'karben yachid, ein or din shel tuta b'karben tzibur. So hedyed should be equal to a kohen gadol. Right? So it means that you won't have Tumah Hutra B'tzibur by Kohen Hedyed. And we know that's not true. Says the Gemara, Le'ikal Mefrechachi, V'ikal Mefrechachi. You could dash in the Kal V'chomer in so many different ways, and Lamaisa, you won't know which way to dash in it. Your head will be spinning just the way it is right now for all of us. Yeah, Ikal Mefrechachi, V'ikal Mefrechachi, says the Gemara, Kal Chod V'chad Teiku B'duchte. Leave all the halachas in place. Don't dash in here any Kal V'chomers, and Rava, you don't dash in your Kal V'chomer either. And Memela, an oinen that's makriv a carbon, even if it's a carbon tzibur, don't be matter it mikal v'chaymer. Because this kind of kal v'chaymer will just lead to trouble. Because you're going to run into problems with psukim and the ways you darshan it, because you can darshan it so many ways. Stay away from this kal v'chaymer, says the Gemara. And Memela, bottom line is that if you're dealing with a oinen kohen hedyet, the halach is bein carbon yachid, bein carbon tzibur, avaydosai psula. It doesn't matter, even if it's a carbon tzibur, it's mechalal, the avoida, and it's not marat. The carbon is not marat. Okay, we'll stop over here.
That's Russian.
Yeah.
Take the